What I'm also certain of is that everything in our life that we go through has specific reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens just because, and if you can take that portion from my story, is like I believe that the greatest treasures that humanity finds, we find in darkest places.
Today I have with me Francisco Jara, and
Hmm.
he's an amazing speaker. I had the beautiful experience of attending one of his seminars a few weeks ago, and it was really life changing. I couldn't wait to ask him to be here today and teaches us, all of us, about being an entrepreneur or doing business with soul. So I think the topic is fascinating, and I can wait to learn how you really came up with that concept and make your mission of life. And thank you for being here, Francisco.
Yeah, well, thank you, Monica, for allowing this to happen and for tapping me on the shoulder. And it's a privilege to be here and to be sharing with your audience. And yeah, this is a very, common question I get asked from time to time. It's like, okay, how was this concept born, And it certainly, I believe, happened very specifically at a time when I was sort of in that dark night of the soul. I think
Ooh.
a lot of individuals, obviously on the planet, that are awakening into greater purpose go through a process that's known as the dark night of the soul, the hero's journey.
Oh,
This process of going deep within. And so, I have the privilege of being raised by a father who is a very successful entrepreneur as well as an uncle. And so I always had business in my genetics and my pedigree. And my father is the quintessential, I think, American dream. He came from as an immigrant from Mexico and has established a very successful enterprise of restaurants and so when I got out of college, I immediately got into the world of business and decided to venture on my own. I felt like it was the right thing to do. And so I did, and I built a really successful business. And as life would have it, though, I got moved through, that period where I went through, I call it the Great Life Awakeners. It's when I went through a stage 3 cancer, then a multi-million-dollar business bankruptcy, and then a divorce. And so
wow.
life was really trying to move me through and awaken me. And I'm a very, I believe, strong man. And so I think it required a lot of, corrections in my life. And so when I was going through that, I was very perplexed. I've always felt myself to be a good human being, and I was just wondering why this had happened. And it was after that event. It was like now 2009. So I went through that in 2006, 2007, and 2008 in sequential years. And in 2009, I found myself doing this exercise to really find my soul's purpose. And it was a simple exercise, the idea of just sort of writing on a piece of paper, like, what is my soul's purpose? And then
Mhm.
creating a space where you just sort of free write and just allow whatever to come out to come out. And the process took about 2 hours for me to finally hit those words, giving business soul.
Ooh.
And when I wrote them, it literally just moved me. It shook me to my core. I started to cry, a deep cry, or more of a weeping sound. And I didn't understand what was going on at that time. I was like, why am I weeping? What is this? And I didn't know what it was, but I tucked it close to my heart and I just continued on my path. And in 2010, I found myself obtaining a master's degree in spiritual psychology. And in that process, I started to learn like the true like psychological methodologies to heal the heart, to heal the soul, to
Oh,
address the pains, the traumas. And as I started to do that, slowly and slowly, I think I just kind of went deeper and deeper and deeper. And my sense of things, and this is what I mentor people to do, but I believe that we kind of travel backwards through our life to finally to sort of heal our entire journey.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go through that process, you eventually, if you're a deep diver, you'll travel through your mother's womb
Ooh.
and heal the gestational imprinting that happens when you're in the womb as a child. And then you then pass through that portal, and then you
Mm-hmm.
go into the lineage. And I think as you start to clean that up, then you get access to another portal, which gives you the access to the collective trauma,
Mm-hmm.
you see. And so I believe that as I was sort of going through and healing my own stuff and eventually going into the lineage, this giving business soul started to really materialize itself. It wasn't like I had to conceptualize what it was,
Mm-hmm.
just being obedient to
Ooh.
what was being presented. And I just continued to sort of follow the breadcrumbs that God was leaving me. And with time, I started to recognize through kind of the whispering that this is going to be an organizational design firm with a business blueprint for a new humanity.
Ooh.
We're in a very specific time, as you know, in our planet, where all the structures are sort of crumbling, and we are needing to reimagine and rebirth all
Mm-hmm.
that's necessary and important. And I think all of us who are listening to this podcast obviously can feel that business needs to have soul. It needs to have a higher purpose, a higher reason for existing. And that's what Giving Business Soul is here to guide entrepreneurs is to heal their own soul, to
Mm-hmm.
heal themselves so that they can begin to live from the soul. And as
Ooh.
they begin to live from the soul, then the way that they end up doing business will be much more service based. It will
I
just
love
not
it.
only be for profit, but for the love of our humanity. And so that's really what Giving Business Soul is that's how I found it, and I feel like it's a treasure.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's individuals on the planet that are finding pockets inside of consciousness that are supposed to be bringing those forward to sort of this new Aquarian age that we're moving into, this time of Aquarius and moving into the new time period. And I feel that I was selected for this specific mission.
I love it.
And so yeah, so that's a little bit about that question that you
Yes.
had.
No, I want to go like part per part, like digest a little everything you said because it was beautiful and I think very rich to get deeper in those stages. The first one that you mentioned, it was about being in the dark night of the soul, right? And
Mhm.
that we all experience at certain point of growth, right? So you said you went through divorce, business bankruptcy, so a lot of things were going on. Did you lose faith, and how can you describe better like what was, because I believe many people is right now going through that, like what kept you going, how was really that stage of your life?
Yeah, certainly. I can offer some guidance there for people that are either experiencing it or have experienced it. It certainly is a very trying time to go through that, and it will feel hopeless. One of the thoughts that was coming through for me at that time was, given especially that I had gone through all three almost simultaneously, I felt like I was at the bottom of the ocean floor.
Yeah.
So it didn't even feel like I had fallen to the ground. It actually felt like it was in the darkest crevices on the planet. And it certainly felt hopeless. And ultimately, I think I just had the perseverance to continue to go. And I think for anyone that's facing that, it's kind of a day by day, and understand that, that spring will follow winter, and that the next
Ooh.
phase is always going to show up. We just have to have the courage to continue to move through that. I refer a lot to the map of consciousness. It's a really powerful frame. And I believe that that courage is needed to get to the higher levels, and so that requires strength of heart. And but what I'm also certain of is that everything in our life that we go through has specific reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens just because, and if you can take that portion from my story, is like I believe that the greatest treasures that humanity finds, we find in darkest places.
Ooh.
And I believe that, the greatest medicine that has made its way into our humanity has come through a broken heart.
Oh, wow.
You see, like like when, the great art, the great music, these great endeavors, a lot of times it comes from brokenness. And I kind of saw that my heart was just completely broken. And through that, this little seed started to slowly emerge out. And I believe that we have to trust, we have to have faith, we have to surrender to
Mm-hmm.
life because she is the great alchemist. She's it can feel cruel, but there's such wisdom in that. I wondered, like, why, God, why would you take me through this? I was trying to do good. I was trying to do good. Why? And
Mm-hmm.
now I look back and I say, man, what wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
that process delivered me. So that's the saying that I say, she can be cruel, but she is beyond wise.
Ooh.
And coming out of that,
Mm-hmm.
and slowly making my way to, present moment, I can look back now and certainly marvel at the mystery, and it's a great drama. It's a great movie. And I think we're all living our myth, our drama, our movie.
Mm-hmm.
And movies are no fun when you know what the ending is going to be.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be, sort of taken by that, by that magic, by that majesty. And know that again, when that spring will follow winter, and that better times are going to come. It's just like God is taking you through a process.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking the grapes and making it into wine, and we just don't understand, but we will. It will all make sense with time.
What was your lesson through that time? Like the biggest lesson that you had? Awakening.
Yeah, I mean, I felt at times I lacked compassion. Uh,
Ooh.
it was hard for me to relate to people because I had figured it all out. I was a successful business
Don't we all?
owner. Yeah, I was a successful business owner. I was supposed to be healthy. I had a beautiful wife, kids. Like I mean, I checked all the boxes. And so when people said, "Hey, I'm struggling with money," I'm like, "Well, you're just not doing this and this and this and this."
Yeah.
And oh, I'm not healthy. Well, it's because this, I had all
Mhm.
the answers.
Yeah.
I thought I had all the answers. And so I learned a lot of humility.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot of compassion. I really learned to trust life. And
Ooh.
I think more than anything, as a man, I learned to surrender.
Wow.
I used to believe that surrender was for the weak, and I
Mm-hmm.
now realize that it's for the strongest among us to actually allow life to hollow us out, to open
Yeah.
our heart fully.
Wow. It touches me because I think for me, when I've been in my own darkest night of my soul, it's been about trust a lot.
Mhm.
And also about the spiritual part, right? You think you understood, you think, I got it, and suddenly there is something else to learn. But yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. So, what is the difference between a business that has soul and a business that hasn't?
Yeah. So the way that I see it is that when I take entrepreneurs to heal,
Hmm.
I really what I kind of say is that the soul is sort of found beneath the rubble, beneath the
Ooh.
pain, and so when you begin to go into yourself and
Mhm.
address those memories that were unprocessed,
Mhm.
those traumas, those emotions. Beneath all of that is your own soul. And so you really like sort of come through and bring the soul out. And the myth that all of us remember is the myth of the sword and the stone.
Mhm.
You know, the myth of Excalibur and the
Yeah.
Arthurian legends, you know, right? And if you remember that, it was only the most, courageous, the most benevolent person that could pull the sword out of the stone. Well, mythology really is the language of the soul. So what the stone is, it's the material world. It's your physical body.
Oh, wow.
And what the sword is, what Excalibur is, it's your soul.
Mhm.
You know, so what we need to do is we need to pull the sword, the soul out of the stone, out of the body. And when we have the courage to do that and to live, from soul presence, what becomes of you is that you want to serve,
Mhm.
right? You want to benefit the whole. You want to be in service.
Mhm.
And so as an entrepreneur, when you start to do that, I believe there's every single individual wants to heal an aspect of society. They look out into the world and they see something that pains them,
Yeah.
something that breaks their heart. And so what I guide people to do is to find that, to
Mhm.
look out into the world and see what breaks your heart, because that's where God left your breadcrumb to find
Mhm.
your purpose. And when entrepreneurs do that, then they can take that pathway and then begin to integrate that into their business, to use their business as a way to support that part of society. For me, it
Mhm.
was to build homes for women and children.
Oh, wow.
I became, I think through the depth of my journey, started to understand the truth about the repression of the feminine over thousands of years at the hands of religion,
Yes.
and it broke my heart.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, I'm going to use my mortgage business to
Mhm.
begin to help that cause in any way that I can. So then I would take a portion of my revenues and I would go and I'd build homes
Mhm.
for women. And so that's been the genesis of the Mortgage Phoenix Group, was to use business as a force for good and to build homes for women and children. Certainly still profitable, but it has the philanthropy,
Mhm.
right? The philanthropy is the feminine.
Mhm.
It has a love for humanity. That's what philanthropy means, love for humanity. So it's the philos, right? And so to integrate philanthropy into business is to bring the soul into business, and that's really what giving business soul is. It's to do that, to bring philanthropy into that. And the reality is, if you can see the logo there behind me, the sun is the masculine, as we all know, and the
Mhm.
moon is the feminine. And so it's really about bringing these two into union within one business structure, and to bring philanthropy and business together, that is bringing the soul in. But in order to do that, you got to pull it out of the stone first. You got to go down in there. And as you do that, I believe that we establish a much more harmonious world, a world that's not based on survival, pleasure, or power, which are the lower chakra centers.
Mhm.
You
But
know,
how those chakras manifest in a business when you are in those chakras? So you are competing, right? You are.
yes. Yeah. So the way you can look at it is that women have a womb,
Mhm.
men have a hara. It's called a hara. And so,
Like
and
your
it's
last name?
like my last name. So it es la masculina, la matriz masculina. So women are able to take a spirit and in the womb make it into a physical being,
Mhm.
right? They have that essence inside of the womb. While men, we can't do that, but we can birth businesses. Women can birth business as well. You have the
Mm-hmm.
ability to do both. But men, we can only birth businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And when our consciousness isn't awakened,
Mm-hmm.
we birth these businesses from the lower centers for
Mm-hmm.
survival, which is all about money, because
Correct.
money represents survival in our world. We do it for pleasure, for the feminine to gain, seduction of the feminine, and then for power, for status,
Mm-hmm.
right? And all businesses, for the most part, are birthed from those three octaves, right? Because most of the human population is still caught there. And
Mm-hmm.
until you go through and begin to heal and heal those aspects of yourself, then you're just going to continue to birth businesses from that place. And as I like to say, I don't trust any man fully until he has gone through his own hell.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he hasn't gone through his own hell, he can be bought, he
Ooh.
can be seduced,
Ooh.
and he can be, given power as well, because he
Mhm.
hasn't overcome those areas.
But in that way, are you saying that it's easier for a woman because of her own nature to have a business with a soul than
It,
men?
it is much easier. It's much easier for women to do that because of your, connection to the divine through your womb.
Mm-hmm.
I believe women are much, the great feminine virtues are trust, faith, and surrender. That's where
Mm-hmm.
that's the highest state of consciousness is a feminine realm,
Mm-hmm.
right? The cosmos and the way everything moves, the patterns of the oceans and the currents and the migration. That's all the
Feminine.
feminine realm. That's Mother Nature. That's the myriad of how everything moves in the cosmos. That's thy will. That's the surrendered path. And so I believe that's much more natural for women. And so yeah, so I think women inherently are much more caring. That's the role that women have been designated to be, the nurturers and to do that role. So yeah, much closer.
But like that, so although I am a woman and I do business and I am a mom and I am very connected with my feminine side as well, I think today we are so much into business sometimes that for me to get a concept about femininity and receiving just because you are, right? It's been a little hard to get there. And I think many women today are forgetting that
Mhm.
because we are pushed to compete in a world that is men still, right? There
Yes.
is a lot of men and masculine energy, will I say, more than men. So, but in the other side, I also see that men, like, because you have to be masculine as well, because we need the masculinity and the feminine
Yes.
together. So, what is the right balance? Like, how we can really not go to one side or the other? Because you don't want suddenly just feminine men in their feminine, right? We need
Right. Yeah.
both.
Yeah, it's really the balance between the two. One sort of visuals I like to give individuals is like, for those that know a little bit about salsa dancing, right? In salsa dancing, you have the 8 count.
Mhm.
That's the structure. That's the masculine.
Oh, wow.
Within that 8 count, within that structure, you have a million possibilities.
Mm.
That's the feminine.
Oh, wow.
Right? If you remove the structure,
Mhm.
then you just have chaos. You don't
That's the
have real,
feminine.
yeah, you don't have form within that. There's
Okay.
actually liberation within the structure to be free because you know the boundaries of it. And
Mhm.
so I believe the way that I like the mortgage business, um, I felt that I would magnetize business to me,
Mhm.
right? Through feeling great in my body, through even pulling people in through my hara. But then I developed the structures. So when
Mhm.
the client came in, there was already a structure that was, pinpoint accurate, precise, that took a client
Systems.
all the way from the beginning to the end to years after. So that
Mhm.
structure allowed me to pull, people in and then move them through the processes.
Mhm.
And through delivering that, I believe that I was able to create a very successful businesses. What I have found with a lot of spiritual people, that they kind of go really deep into their feminine, they
Mhm.
don't have any structure.
Yeah.
They don't have any discipline. And then all of a sudden it's just kind of like I just want to be in Bali dancing through the flower fields and healing and doing that. I went through that phase, and I had an organization where I would let people, oh, you're not feeling good today, you need to process something, go ahead, take the day.
Go home.
And I created an organization that was flimsy,
Mhm.
that it wasn't that wasn't tight, and I had to clean all that up. But I had to come into the center first because I was so masculine, like so many of us. And then I went so feminine, and then
Mhm.
I found the middle ground. Once I found the middle, then I started to run a very successful organization.
That is beautiful what you're saying, because I don't believe in I am very high spiritually, but I am broke,
Right.
right? Is suddenly I became this spiritual person, but and I now I am having this aha moment that is telling me it's because it's the lack of a structure,
Yes.
right? Because you then go to fear of system, fear of masculinity, right?
Yes. You kind
Oof.
of feel like that my pain was coming from this masculine side, so I disowned it.
Ooh.
I disowned it. And in disowning that, then again, you're not going to have structure, you're not going to have discipline. And if you
Mhm.
remember before, when you were in that masculine side, you wake up, you go to work every day, and you go and you do the thing, and then all of a sudden we get spiritual, and it's like we're kind of in a different flow, and what we do, what feels good, and so forth. And so when you can bring them back in together, like I used to have because I lost all my money, I then developed a relationship where I disowned money. And I was
Ooh.
like, like I don't need it. I know I
Mhm.
need to pay the bills and I need to pay my employees, but I don't care about it. And I had to come back into the place where I could say I love and appreciate money.
Mhm.
And I understand that money is necessary for me to achieve my mission.
Yeah,
You know?
and yeah, and it's part of your soul, right? It's a reflection of who you are inside. And if you are an abundant, beautiful person, it has to reflect in every area of your life, as money as relations
Mm-hmm.
and any other area that is being reflected to you, right?
Exactly. Exactly. That's it. And I think a lot of spiritual people are not doing well financially because they blame the money, they blame the masculine. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like this is a game of unity, of union. And I
Oof.
think that the sooner we come into bridging those two things, the better we're going to be able to move through the world and bring forward the mission, that we have on the planet.
But why do you think we are so unbalanced in that? Because I think I am having like aha moment, because I never saw as clear as you are explaining how important is the masculine and the feminine coming in together. But I think society is really upside down with that concept, right?
Yeah, I do think so. And I believe that the way to bring them into balance is to essentially you have to go within. But the way that I guide people, it's essentially to look at everything that irritates you. So if the
Yeah,
structures irritate you, if money irritates you,
going.
then we have to go in there. And as
Hmm.
we heal those portions of ours, then we come into the balance.
Yeah.
I know very spiritual people that are always triggered,
Oh yeah.
and they're triggered at Donald Trump, they're triggered at Biden, they're triggered in the war, they're triggered all over the place. And what I say is that's your mirror.
Hmm.
That's your mirror. Where are you at war? Where are you sexist? Where are you racist? You know, and
Mhm.
when you start to understand that we know this, like the world is a projection of how we are inside of ourselves. So if
Yeah.
stuff is triggering us, then it's like let's have the courage to go, why?
Ooh.
Where am I doing the same thing? Where am I relating to myself, to others, or with God in the way that I see this thing? And I think that as you heal those things, there is a union that happens. And in all the esoteric traditions, in
Mhm.
Christian mysticism, in Judaism, in Buddhist, in the traditions that were mystery schools, they all knew this.
Mhm.
It was about reconciling the dark and the light. Even in the story of Yeshua, right? People know him as Jesus. It's his wrong name. It's Yeshua. But he starts in the desert,
Mhm.
right? And remember, like Satan appears to him. Satan's not outside. Satan was in him,
Oof.
and he didn't succumb to the darkness. He embraced it,
Mhm.
and with the light of his own presence. And then the ministry begins. But the
Mhm.
ministry happens when you overcome your darkest
Darkness.
shadow. And then that's when the union happens. And when the union happens, the heart permanently opens.
Ooh.
It stays permanently open. And there's actually a physiological process where the heart goes and it stays open. It can never close again.
Oh,
And when
wow.
that heart cracks open, there's a frequency that comes from that is
Ooh.
felt, that is heard from the texture of voice. There's a deep authenticity that starts to
Mhm.
permeate from the individual. You see?
Wow. So going a little back for what you were saying, being an activist, right?
Mhm.
There is so many people like myself. I grew up and I work in nonprofits in a third world country where you see so much poverty and you want to make a change. But how you can balance that? Because at certain point I realized like you are so aware of so many things that are happening, and then with time I have to realize it's better like to change me and help me so I can radiate and bring whoever resonates with that. And I see here a lot of activists that are like so into, did you see what is happening there, and Hawaii and this and that. And I, at this point of my life, I try to just put my focus in things that I can really change more than growing. So how do you see that? How you can be an activist today without really focusing in the negative?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly paradoxical, right? Because obviously we want to help.
Correct.
I believe that the greatest work that we can all do, it was actually known as the great work.
Oh, wow.
It was known as this as the great work. And the great work is to reconcile all that is inside of us, to
Mm-hmm.
heal the pains of our own, because if we do not heal the pains fully, they're being projected onto the screens of our reality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so what I suggest is that you go through and heal all the way through. And then what begins to emerge is your purpose. It's like your work becomes your worship.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what I'm doing right now is I'm singing my song.
Yeah.
I'm staying in my lane. I cannot save the whole world. I was never designed for us. None of us are playing savior here, right? We have
That's
to
so true.
stay in our lane.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that will be what when the soul begins to sing and enough souls begin to play their song, it's like we will hear a new
Beautiful symphony.
symphony on the planet,
Yeah.
and it'll be a
Ooh.
new frequency.
Frequency.
Exactly. But most people don't want to do the internal work or the great work. So let me just get busy and go and help and help and help and help. And we
Others, because
others.
others have to change, right?
Exactly.
Not
Exactly.
you.
They're here. I believe that the pain we're witnessing on the planet right now is meant to break our hearts. you know, for people
Oh.
to go to finally like to go into their suffering, you know,
Wow.
because the great treasure is actually found in the suffering. You know, there's two things that bind us all. It is love
Mhm.
and it's suffering. You
But
know,
you don't think we can learn from joy? Like,
I
do we
believe
need to go through suffering? Really have to?
yes. I think in order to sustain joy, to feel
Mhm.
joy, the greatest kind of joy, you have to be willing to feel the greatest deeps of pain, because
Mhm.
joy and bliss and grief are on the opposite ends of the spectrum.
Oh, wow.
And you cannot you can touch them, but you can't live there. If you have the courage to go all the way through, then these are accessible at any moment.
Mhm.
You know, most people don't, they're not willing to go very far down. You know, they want to be in the love and the light, you know, because maybe they've experienced some sense of suffering. But think about it, the most gracious human beings on the planet are those who have suffered the most.
Ooh, yeah.
Right? Suffering is grace. That's where we find the grace of God, is in the suffering. I came to know God in my suffering, in my grief. Grief is the portal in.
Ooh. And I think we come from, oh, yeah, I'm like, I don't want to leave a big silence, but it's so like, wow.
Mm.
Um, Emotions, that takes me to emotions,
Yeah.
because I personally come from a generation and like you said, collective in my country. You don't have time to be crying for that, right? You have to keep going, and like where takes us all of that, right, is a place where you don't allow yourself to suffer. And
Yes.
you are so right, because I truly believe I just learned surrender, like fully surrender in the dark night of my soul, right? But I had to go there. A month ago, no, not a month, a year ago, I will tell you, no, we can learn just for joy,
Yeah.
right? Like, no, 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 no. I live in joy, I experience joy. But like you said, having the courage to go there and really walk through the fire and go
Yes.
to the other side, it really opens another frequency that lets you, yeah, you will never know if you don't go there. That's the thing, right? Because like I
Yeah.
said last year, oh, no, no, no.
Mhm. Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
And I think even, you know, what I shared at the Ascension Summit at the event you attended, but I take a lot from Yeshua, you know, I've been studying him for my whole life. And one of the archetypical codes that was left in the story of the resurrection was just that, just what we're talking about, right? When most people think of the resurrection story, they think about the ascension into heaven. But
no,
it
never
but in
completely.
the passage it says that he descended into hell, and on the third day he rose into the heavens. So it's like he went to hell first, and he was there the entire time, right? And then the ascent happened, right?
Mhm.
So the truth of the matter is that we must descend before we ascend.
Oof.
That's the code. And when we have that courage, most people, and some people are, Monica, are not meant to go all the way. In this
Oh.
lifetime, they're just playing in this strata. They're not
Mhm.
meant. But those of us who can hear something, and we're being pushed and pulled by our soul and by God, the way to get there is to go there.
Mhm.
And when you're able to take that voyage in, and you have good mentorship, and you have the right tools, the right frameworks, because it's a treacherous path. It's not easy.
Mm.
You know, I spent a lot of years in that space. You know, I would just go to work and I would go home, and I would study, and I would just feel all of that. But now that I sort of know that terrain, I help people navigate it much easier, because for me, it took me a long time. And I don't think it needs to to take that much time, you know.
In all your these years that you've been learning the teachings of Joshua, what do you think is the one that most resonated with you, that you most impacted you from the teachings?
Certainly that was a big part of it. Was sort of, you know, descending into the pain. I think his story also represents our story,
Mhm.
right? You know, if you go back into the story, he had to go through 5 major betrayals, right? And those betrayals, what he did, he was like an alchemist. He took the betrayal, which is a
Mm.
form of non-love, and he alchemized it with love, meaning he changed it through his own forgiveness, his own love, and he dissipates that. And
Mhm.
he had to do that over and over again, you know. And I think his life is representative of our life.
Mhm.
If we really go back, we might have 5 major betrayals, you know. And so if we have the ability to forgive, to have compassion, not only for the person but for ourselves, most
Mhm.
importantly, you know, then I believe that that's really, you know, one of the big sort of things that I took from him. And also, you know, I also really ponder and contemplate John 14:12 a lot, where he says, do as I do, and you can do greater works than even I.
Mhm.
In the tradition that I study him, he was known as the great revealer, the great revealer.
Mhm.
Not that he was the only one capable of, but he came to demonstrate how we can all activate Christ consciousness.
Okay.
If we were to follow that frame of
Mhm.
descending
Of the
and
sin.
then, you know, alchemizing the betrayals, and what he promised us, if we do that work,
Mhm.
is eternal life, you know. And but most people confuse eternal life to be a duration of time, but time doesn't exist, you know. It's a man-made construct.
Mhm.
So eternity isn't a duration of time, it's a timeless state. So
Mhm.
therefore, eternal life will be granted to those who can live in the present moment.
Ooh.
And the way to live in the
Uh-huh.
present moment,
Just got it. Yeah.
yes, we have to continue to die unto ourselves.
Mhm.
We have to continue to do this work, so when you're in front of people, you're
You're there.
you're there. And then
Mhm.
that's the energy that like you're fully embodied,
Mhm.
the soul, the body, all together. And you know that the great work says that the goal that we're having here is to die before we die, so that when we die, we do not die.
Mhm.
To die
Inter
before we die,
Interesting.
so that when
Explain.
we die, we do not die, right? Essentially, to understand that we are a soul,
Mhm. That will not
right? That
die.
we are, and the soul is immortal.
Mhm.
That's the immortality.
Mhm.
And in order to access the immortality, we had to live a full life, a total life,
Yeah.
a life of totality, where we embrace the darkness, we embrace the pain, we embrace the grief, you know, and we activate, and we come to know our own soul. And when we know that, then we no longer believe in God, but we
Mhm.
come to know God.
Going back to the forgiveness that caught my attention. Can we really forgive everything? And because there is things and there is things, right?
Mhm.
So how do you get there, and how you will conceptualize forgiveness? What is forgiveness for you?
So what I see as forgiveness, there is the very, I would say, surface level forgiveness, to forgive that person,
Mhm.
but more importantly, it's to forgive ourselves.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is that the ego is a gift from God. And what happens when we become wounded and traumatized is that this ego comes and it protects us.
Mhm.
it creates a program. It creates judgments, misconceptions, and interpretations of the world. And they get set in so that if the trauma happens again, it doesn't hurt as bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes a little cocoon, a
Mm-hmm.
little binding around the memory, right? And so when then therefore what we have to do is actually forgive ourselves for judging that the world was not safe. You know, forgiving ourselves for
Ooh.
buying into the misconception that I am not worthy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, because when we get wounded as children,
Mm-hmm.
those misconceptions, hey, you're not important, right? Because initially we come in feeling like we're important, we're unique, we're all love. And then the hurt comes, then the mind protects you and says, hey, you're not important.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, if the pain comes, it doesn't hurt as bad. And so what we have to do is forgive ourselves. We have to clean up the ego complexes that we lay in there. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like in spiritual psychology, it's this idea like I forgive myself for buying into the misconception that I am not worthy of love. Because the truth is that I am a daughter of God and all I am is love. I
Ooh.
forgive myself for buying into the judgment that I am not important,
Mm.
because the truth is that I have a unique purpose on the planet. You know, and so don't have to necessarily forgive that person, but we have to forgive ourselves for developing that structure. And with time, that thing dissolves. Those ego complexes that are still living in our bodies as memory in our fascia system
Mm-hmm.
dissolve. And then that shame becomes grace, it becomes love. And when that happens, we move up in vibration, you know. And but that really, it's the power tool. People are into psychedelics with ayahuasca and mushrooms and all, and they think that that's going to heal that, but it doesn't. It makes you aware that that's there, but if you're still being triggered, you know, then it means that there's still work to do. There's still more forgiveness. And the ability, I believe that on the cross he demonstrated, you know, that like, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they've done. That demonstrates the ultimate human capacity to forgive.
Forgiveness. Mm.
If after, you know, that entire walk of being beaten and doing these things, it's like he still had it in him to
Wow.
forgive.
Mm.
So that demonstrates the capacity of the human soul, that they know not what they're doing. They know not, you know, and
Mm.
and it's like they're here to play a role, you know. And I've gone through my sexual molestation, my, you know, all my different things, and I can hug my perpetrator, you know. And I can, and I have that capacity because I recognize that there was a contract there, you know.
Ooh.
There was a contract between us, that he was meant to walk an internal living hell, you know, so that I could be set free.
Wow. Wow. How uh, how, like, when you say forgiving something very, very intense and hard in your life sets you free, right?
Mhm.
But it was really that your night of the soul?
Well, that moved me into beginning to go inward.
Mhm.
Those sequence of events began the path in. And once you begin in and you devote yourself to the soul, to the great work, what happens is that um, the soul begins to recapitulate. It starts to bring up the wounding of the past in present situations. And it goes backwards in time almost. Is that when I take my client, it seems like Like in that case, when I was 33 and I started doing this work, um, I immediately started to deal with the divorce,
Mhm.
the loss of the money, the
Mhm.
grieving of the cancer. And as I cleared through those, I went through my teenage years and the heartbreaks and the different things that occurred there. And then all of a sudden, I get to when I'm 5, 6 years old. And that's like a knot. Right there was like a knot.
Mhm.
Because in one night I wake up and I'm being sexually molested. And then the next night, the abandonment of my mother begins, right? Because she had just gotten married. And now I've been sleeping with her my whole life. And then now they get married. Imagine they get married. We go to this new little house. One day I wake up and there's this thing happening. And then the next night I begin to cry. And my mom doesn't, she can obviously hear me, but my stepdad is saying, hey, he's got to learn how to sleep on his own. He's 6 years old. They didn't know what happened.
Mhm.
And then I cry the next night and the next night. I'm a very stubborn kid and I keep crying because she was always here. She always comforted me, my mom.
Mhm.
She didn't, and so I kept crying and crying. So the abandonment went deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So in one, occasion, I have the abuse of the masculine through the domination of power, you know, and then the abandonment of the mother. So all of a sudden I get to that point and I could heal, like I could find solace for myself, right? Like that I was that, because as a man, when you experience sexual molestation like that, you feel broken, you feel flawed, like there's something wrong, right? So I was able to feel love for myself, but I couldn't get it for him.
Of course.
It was just hard.
Yeah.
And so I had to go through a gestalt process, but it took time. Like
Mhm.
the soul brings up the stuff when it's time. You don't have to try to hurry this. You don't have to try to figure it out. That's why I say life is the alchemist. When it's ready, when it's time, it'll surface,
Mhm.
and at one point it surfaced, and all of a sudden I'm in the pain of this, and I'm taken, by a woman as a facilitator, and she starts walking me through a gestalt. A gestalt is a psychological process where you take your consciousness to that time when the abuse happened,
Mhm.
and then you start to communicate from that 6 year old.
Mhm.
And then I started to, communicate as my mature adult.
Mhm.
And I'm communicating back and forth in this, but why did this happen? There's nothing wrong with you. You're
Mhm.
beautiful. It's just the way it was. It doesn't mean that anything wrong. You're fine. I understand, but why? And it just kept going, until he said, it's like he stumped me. I couldn't answer anymore. And he said, but why? And then I get moved into my imaginal realm in my consciousness. And that's where I see, this person and myself in the spirit world. And he says to me, hey, let's go down back into the earth. And this time I'm going to commit a heinous act. I'm going to sexually abuse you.
Oh, wow.
And it's going to be terrible, but you're going to heal. And when you heal, you're going to be this great pillar of light. But me, I'm going to walk a living hell. But that's okay. That's okay. We need to do this. Are you ready? And it was like when I saw that dialogue in my imaginal realm, I saw it. And so that's where I broke open. I felt the contract that was there,
Mhm.
and forgiveness flooded in. It flooded in. And after that moment, Monica, what I know now when I
Mhm.
work with people, is that the soul doesn't feel comfortable in the body because the frequency is not subtle enough to house the soul in the temple. There's a vibrational energy that doesn't allow the soul to fully settle. When I healed that trauma, like the soul just went,
Wow.
and it stood in the body, and I started to dream every night, and then once I healed that, then it was the abandonment of my mother, but it was going in steps. Then all of a sudden the relationship I was in, we had to move apart. The dreams were saying, hey, it's time to separate. And she was a mystic also. So it was like, we knew we had to do that. As much as we loved each other, it's time to go apart. And I knew, I'm like, I'm reliving the abandonment of my mother now.
Oof.
You see? And then I had to mother myself back into wholeness at that point. Whereas
Wow.
like every night I started to cry. I was literally recapitulating that memory when I'm 6 years old, and I'm crying every night. So I'm reliving it. But now I'm getting an opportunity to console myself, right? It couldn't come from another person. It
Yeah.
couldn't come from this woman,
Yeah.
And as I did that, that's where I feel like I brought in the feminine pole.
Wow.
That's when the feminine came in. And after that moment, I no longer needed anything outside of myself. I didn't need money. I didn't need a woman. I didn't need anything. Like I felt whole.
Wow. Wow. No, because thank you for teaching with your own life. And I think there is no better teacher than the one that walks the path.
Mm.
I love the part that you talk about the contracts because I see a lot of that in the work that I also do, past life regressions, right?
Mm.
And that is the thing that we all are thinking wherever we are living is so big and so because we see it since our human eyes, right? And having the experience in a very dense frequency. But when we go up, and I love how you describe it because it's true, we have contracts. And normally the people that is going to hurt us, is going to love us, those are our biggest contracts and probably souls that are really here to help us to expand our soul and to really go to the purpose we're meant to accomplish in this life.
Right.
Saying that, I still admire you as a human being for having the courage to really go there and understand that in the capacity that we have while we're here, right? Because
Mm.
it's very different if you go there, but coming back, you can say many times we have resistance and say, oh, no, 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 you just imagine that, right? No, 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 you are just trying to. So you did it and it is beautiful. And I am so grateful that you are expanding that knowledge, not just for men, that is very hard to talk about those things for men because cultural things, but also for women. There is so many women that I built in anger and shame, and lack of forgiveness. But I think the biggest message that I hear you saying is you have to go inside. And as you are ready, life is going to be showing you what you are ready to process or the size that you can expand at this point, right? Because I have many times in my life that I felt like I was expanding and I'm so happy I expand. And then it comes again and you have to expand again. But yeah, it beautiful. And I hope your book, I'm sure your book is teaching all of that, the book that you are writing right now.
Yes.
What is the goal of that book?
The goal of that book is it's called Giving Business Soul, The Rebirth of the Merchant. And so I'm bringing back to human awareness a lost archetype for the entrepreneur, and that is the archetype of the merchant. And it's a 7-chapter book. The first chapter is I always forget the first chapter, but it's the mythical wasteland and the restoration of the Grail. right? The mythical wasteland is kind of what we are finding right now,
Mhm.
you know, the decaying of our world. And then how do we restore it, right?
Mhm.
The Grail really represents the Holy Grail, means Santa Grail,
Mhm.
San Grail, which means royal bloodline, which means your own soul, right? Our own divinity, right? So in order to heal the earth, we have to go and restore our soul. We got to do this work. The second chapter is called The Great Work, which is about learning that the greatest work we can do is to bring union between the opposites. And then the third chapter is Life as Alchemy, that
Mhm.
life is the great alchemist and that she will move you along and initiate you when the moments are right. The fourth chapter is The Hero's Journey. This will be my story,
Mhm.
all of what I shared today, or at least parts of it. The fifth is The Alchemical Marriage. The alchemical marriage is called the uniting of the opposites, the bringing forth of the light and dark within you. The sixth chapter is called The Birth of the Violet Organization. That is the blueprint that I teach entrepreneurs to have for their organizations. Violet being wisdom, so that we no longer birth for money, pleasure, or power, but instead for wisdom, for Sophia, for the great earth, the great mother. And then a blueprint for a new humanity. That's the seventh chapter. So it's taken in through seven chapters, and it'll be to reintroduce that merchant archetype. That is an archetype that will become an internal North Star for those who feel that they want to participate in this great shift in power that we now hold as entrepreneurs, and to do business with a higher purpose, to do business, you know, as a force for good, as a force for God, and and yeah, and that's the book, and you know, I've got most of it complete now, and it should be out soon. I don't like to say that because then like life says, oh yeah, you know, keep
How soon?
how soon? Yeah, exactly. So I just got to keep going. But that's what the book is about.
Wow, I can't wait to read it and help you to promote.
Thank you.
But so do you think our business are as big as our mindset or as much as we have work in ourselves? So if we want to grow our business, we need to grow ourselves.
Yeah, I think so. I think not all businesses are meant to be big, you know.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think that it'll be organic, you know, what
Mhm.
emerges out. It doesn't have to be of the mind, but it's just like a natural emergence that begins to happen as we continue to heal. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we don't need a lot of money to be very joyful. If you
Mhm.
had a business that, you know, let's say it was 1 million or 2 million or 3 million, 5 million, something that's considered to be, you know, not like these big corporations per se, um, and you were making great profit, you know, and the organization was running itself because of the principles that make up the organization. And instead of making, you know, $1 million, you're making 700,000 a year, but you have time, you have freedom.
Mm.
You know, everything is running on its own because of the value system and principles that make up a violet. Then I think what we're all looking for really is to have sufficient for ourselves, but that our organization is doing that good work of doing that philanthropy, of going to building those homes, of going and helping pets, of providing food for homeless, whatever that heartbreak of yours is. Imagine having a lot of time. Imagine taking your organization to go do those things together. Um, we don't need a lot. You know, some people are meant to have a bigger ones, but we don't have to try to compete with anybody. It's like it's just natural for you. And as long as you do, you know, what is coming through for you and forget about everybody else and the competition, you know, I think that that's really where we find great joy, where we're just being ourselves. we're being true and authentic to who we are, what we come to do, and we're not looking at competing with anybody.
No. And what do you think about where is the planet going? Do you believe in fifth dimension, other dimensions?
Yeah.
Where are you with that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're in the time of the great unveiling, like in like I like to say it's like the great apocalypse means the unveiling, which means that we're in the great revelation. So we're beginning to see, we're beginning to be able to understand deeper what was really going on. And so the revelation is here. I think that's going to force a lot of us inward.
Mhm,
And I believe that there are a certain amount of individuals that are meant to do this great work so that they can hold a different frequency. I
mhm,
believe these individuals become the counterbalance to all the darkness that is here and all the low level vibration. Um, and I kind of look at the idea like from the gene key perspective. It's like there's 144,000 that is meant to, it's a prophecy
mhm,
that these are individuals who hold the highest frequencies. And when you read the book Power versus Force, it says like one Yeshua, one Buddha, one
mhm.
Lao Tzu, that they pull out millions out of darkness
Yeah,
because of that frequency that they
I
hold.
like
So
that.
imagine, a whole legion, 144,000 holding that level of frequency. It to me, it feels like the channel gets changed,
Mhm,
you know. It feels like there'll be like a bifurcation, like those that, are, like that old world will die off and everything with it. It feels like it'll happen in waves.
mhm,
Like I think they'll be the first, individuals to kind of begin to hold that frequency and then pull people in. But that's beyond my pay grade at this point. I do feel like the logic of what I see unfolding is that more and more people are beginning to go inward, and with that, that's why we're seeing so much darkness, because people are beginning to heal, and the world is a projection of our own darkness. And as we go deeper, more darkness,
mhm.
um,
Oh,
you see.
uh-huh.
And the reason I think we're seeing it is because people are going deep within themselves and it's starting to be visible. But I also think that's more light that's beginning to come in. I think that after the year 2027, things are going to shift dramatically. But I think over the next 3.5,
2027?
yeah, yeah, I think so. That's
We are in 2024 right now.
I know. We're in the time of urgency, I think, but with technology, with everything that's happening, knowledge is spreading quicker. People are starting to see things here in the United States that our food system, our health system, everything's broken. And so I think we're in it.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of a lofty thought, but we'll see. I think nobody really knows, and I think I'm very curious to see how it all unfolds. But I do know that one person that does this work helps millions of people, and so I just see a lot of people really going in. And yeah, and in quantum mechanics, there's something known as critical mass, and critical mass is that in order to get a change,
Mhm,
all you need is a very small percentage, very small
mhm.
percentage, and all of a sudden, boom, the shift happens. So when I do the mathematics, that 144,000 is pretty close to the ratio of the 8 billion.
Oh, wow. Oh, I could go on and on with you. So I hope to have you again when you bring your beautiful book. But like I said before, thank you for leading and leading with your own story, with the courage of talk about it, of show you as you are with everything that you bring to the table, like the light, the darkness, the experiences. And I learned a lot today, and I hope many people will do. And you have a beautiful soul. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and with everybody that is going to watch this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Monica. It was a pleasure being here. And thank you for opening the space and for listening so intently and for allowing my story to touch you in the way that it has. And I hope it does the same for all the listeners. So we'll
Thank
see you
you.
soon.
Yes, thank you so much.